performing on camera. So we actually do this quite a lot here at Videomaker. Actually, you do it quite a lot.
Yeah.
Where your approach is different from maybe most of our approach, where when you do it, you're the on-camera talent and the director simultaneously a lot of the times.
Yeah, and the producer and the editor and the shooter. But yeah.
Yes. So there's a number of ways to do this. I think you've done them all. So I'm curious which of your preferences. You could memorize a script and just recite it at the camera. You can have some notes with some bullet points and kind of just try to riff off of those bullet points. You can improvise the whole dang thing, like have no idea what you're going to talk about until you're in front of the camera. Or you can read off a teleprompter. I think we probably would do the teleprompter more than anything, but what do you think, Chris, in terms of your own personal preference?
Well, so the best outcome is always prompter. I always end up saying all the things I wanted to say. They all get said in an elegant way that I can spend time to think about. So I like that because I end up looking better. But the bullet points and just kind of riffing, I feel pretty comfortable with that. I know the content. I think really if you're talking about stuff that you're not well versed in, like you're just hosting something or whatever else, it might be different. But it feels pretty good, and I do less takes. So like usually when I'm on a prompter, like I'd say each on camera set of lines, I would do 3 to 6 times. And that's mostly just to get through, not getting tongue tied and twisted there on what you're saying. And then, then I can actually direct based on inflection, like, oh, I don't like how I said that word. I'm going to do it again, where it's really hard to rinse and repeat when you're just going off the cusp. You kind of get the idea, and it really is somewhat writing as you go for that. Bullet points is nice, though, I get really off track pretty quickly. In memorizing, that's very much, actors, and that's usually when you're interacting with someone, it would seem strange that you'd be reading, and we're usually doing a hosting type thing. So it's not necessary for the feel of the actual shot. It's just more of if I memorized, if I had a chance to do that, which I don't think I'd do memorizing very well in general. I'd mix it all up. I don't think I'd be a good actor for that reason. But that's when it's short, I do that. When I do, sometimes I'm doing like 4 to 5 sentences on camera. Those not going to be able to memorize. A lot of times it's tech specs, and those are difficult to spout out. But the memorizing like a single line, like my introduction or my outro to videos, I've done them enough times, and they're always consist of mostly the same kind of thing. So that's not terribly difficult to just memorize and do, but that's just because I've done them so many times. But yeah, really it comes down to what kind of content you're making. So obviously if you're doing a vlog, I don't know anybody that's going to script out a vlog and then read a prompter while they're doing it. But some bullet points, more so to just give you a path, a direction to go. Like you got to get to A to B. I don't care how you get there, just get from A to B. That's cool. That works pretty well. I do that, but then I'll exclude something out of a video because I couldn't say it well, instead of excluding it because the content didn't belong there. And that bothered me, and that's really what made me go to prompter all the time, because I like to sound like I know what I'm talking about, because most of the time I do, but just riffing might make you a little more clumsy, more conversational, and maybe even harder to follow depending on the kind of content, or really, I guess, how many wormholes you go on. I tried to keep it pretty simple and on target, but really overall, the least amount of time is just riffing. But I got to know the content. But really, I choose to do the prompter if I can, because it's really the easiest way to get the best out. But reading a prompter can be difficult. I'm not wearing glasses right now because I have lights really close to me, so that can be, I don't have my glasses on, so I'm reading from a prompter that's further away. It's harder to read. And as well, you might see my eyes move more because I am searching a little harder for it, or depending on how close the camera is. What about you, Mike? Like, I know you've done all of the above, maybe not as much as I have. And definitely we're not getting to the point of like how well you perform, but rather just getting the content out. What works for you?
For me, 9 times out of 10, it's prompter. I mean, I can do an okay job, going off of bullet points, depending on what the subject matter is. Certainly, if it's video related and we're talking about some technical kind of things, I feel good when I go off of bullet points, and it actually sounds good and looks good a lot of times, depending on how skillful the editor is, I guess. But what I found in those situations when you're going kind of off the cuff is it's really easy to make simple mistakes in something, right? So you're just saying something and you just sort of breeze through it and you accidentally say kilohertz instead of megahertz, and you don't even think about it. You never acknowledge it until after the whole project's done, and no one's paying attention to that level of like technical detail. And because it just wasn't written down in and on the teleprompter, it's just like it's easy to miss that kind of stuff. But besides that, if I'm doing a video where the precise details are not that important, like for example, if I'm doing something like that's a promo for Videomaker, or I did something that was like a promo for OMPT once, it was like 30 seconds, I could riff on it. I did it a handful of times, so I got a good performance. Those always feel good to me. It's like, that way it's kind of like written in my voice, you know what I mean? But otherwise, if I'm just walking into a studio cold, teleprompter all the way. I mean, it always is different. The delivery is always a little bit more rigid, I guess, or I don't know. It's just different. It sounds a little bit more scripted. It's a lot of times it's written for just not how I speak. But at the same time, the end product always turns out better. I say the things that I'm supposed to say. There's less like ums and uhs, which I use a lot. It drives me crazy. I can't listen to my own stuff because I throw those in there all the time. I don't have to worry about this issue that I always have with my eyes darting around. We'll talk about, what to do with your eyes a little bit later, but teleprompter for me is the way to go, and, to your point, the idea of like, knowing what you're talking about when you walk into the studio outside of the teleprompter, the teleprompter, I think, fixes a lot of that. Like we've had people who have done, work for Videomaker where we need a host for a video, and our producer wrote it, whether Chris, it's you or anyone else, and the person can read a teleprompter really well, and as a result they seem like an expert, because they're good at reading the teleprompter and they're convincing when they speak, despite the fact that they have no idea what they're reading necessarily. So that's why I would say teleprompter most of the time. If you're fortunate enough to have one, I would use it.
Yeah, the thing about, well, I've kind of a double standard here. I know as a director, I have different expectations. I surely would want you to memorize your lines. I know when I was making commercials, they're 30-second commercials, so like the lines were so easily digestible. I always had to memorize by like the end of the shoot, just because you're looking at the script so many times, just, they're usually just, one-liners, right? And so that's something I would hope there. And I know that when I first started Videomaker, that was something I was always a proponent of. We always had salesmen that were always trying to get us to get a prompt or whatever. And it's because a lot of people, like you're saying, are stiff when they're reading. They don't, and it might not be in their voice, so they don't have the right inflection for it, or the right energy for what they're saying, because they're not really feeling what they're saying. They're just saying it. And so, the memorizing will allow it to be a little more comfortable. But, you're reading a prompter and looking natural, that's really, it's funny because I made so many videos for a long time with just the adlib and bullet points. And I got people were saying, "Hey, stop reading the prompter." And I'm like, "You're watching my eyes think. I'm not reading a prompter. That's me processing." So I, in those times, and then other times, people, you just won't know it. Like you really don't know what's not in frame. You don't know what's really going outside there. You can assume things, and there's definitely ways to figure out other things. But I would say that, prompter, it's really difficult for some people. I've had people clam up that just can't get in front of the camera. And that's really like the fear of the red light, the fear of like, and you're on, or that's when, like, if you're a smart director or producer, you'll start rolling when they're practicing. So when they freeze up, when they actually are doing it, you already have it done and you can excuse them. I definitely have had that quite a few times where it's just like, okay, this guy's going to be bad. I better start rolling now and hope that they get through one good take. So I at least go, okay, I know I have it done, at least completed. I mean, that's the hard thing about a lot of it. Like for us, if we're just presenting video, getting through the content and not screwing it up and being mostly on point is good enough. We don't need perfectly communicated words all the time, or like just really elegant reads that really have this super flow. We try to do that, and I don't think that we don't do that, but it's not like it's as important as like saying your lines in a narrative or something like that.
Yeah. If you're talking about making a movie, then you really want to be believable. Right. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to pull your viewers out. They're going to acknowledge. They're going to recognize. Oh, wait, this is not real. Yeah. But yeah, your point about like memorizing the script even with a teleprompter. I think there's like an in between spot there. If you memorize the script and you're still using a teleprompter, then the words are there more like they're cues. Like actually, we haven't talked about cue cards, but they're just like the reminder of this is the part that you're at. Yeah. But I think there's like an in between mode of walking in cold in front of the teleprompter and then memorizing it, which is like just familiarizing yourself with it. So one thing that I've found is really helpful is to just read through the script twice beforehand, so you just know the context of the sentences and the words as they appear next to each other. So this is something that I struggle with and that professionals don't. And when I say professionals, I mean people whose job it is to read teleprompters, like news anchors. A news anchor can look at a teleprompter and read it for the first time and only time and get through the whole thing with no issues, and they're just like total pros. Whereas when I read it, I'm going through and my mind is processing the words as I read it. And so if I don't have the context of how these words and sentences relate to one another and where they're going, my mind starts to set expectations about where the sentence is going, and my inflection adjusts accordingly, often in a way that is inappropriate to what it's trying to actually do. So in my experience, read through it once or twice so you understand the context. It's way easier to get through when you're reading it off the teleprompter then.
Yeah, I'm still, when I do read off a prompter, why it takes me 3 to 6 takes is because I'm usually looking for the beats to hit. I'm looking for, and so while I'm reading the script, through a prompter, I know when I'm getting close to the end, because that's the other thing I've seen a lot with people reading prompter is if you haven't read the script before, you don't really know when the last word is, and so you don't know where to put the period or what have you in that way. But it's one of those, if you're able to change the words into your voice or to flow. So that's what I get the benefit of getting to do because I'm the one writing the script and producing it. So likely I'm not changing it on because I've already put it in my own voice, but I have a lot of times where I have a script that was written by somebody else, but I'm the one producing it. So I can make the call on like, oh, I can change this to to a few other words that mean exactly the same thing, but work better for me when I alliterate them and speak them out loud. So, because that's the thing, I know for writing scripts for commercials, I always read my scripts out loud. One, because I usually had to perform the voiceover, but also because some things just don't flow like they do on paper. You'll read something on paper and it'll just, you could put the most dense writing and it'd be like, okay, cool. Because you also have the chance to be able to read back through it and really understand the core of it. Whereas a lot of times when you're just on video, like people aren't making specific details and writing it down. So you have to really make sure there's enough time to process what you're saying. That's I guess the hybrid as well is also like bullet points through a prompter, which I have also done. I don't like that as much. So, like just doing like an outline. I've done the like impromptu off an outline more so to give myself a roadmap to where I'm going. And that kind of thing. That helps me like, stay on beat a little bit better, but it still doesn't come off as good as if I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker. So when I write stuff, I will say it in a more elegant way than I would otherwise. Cause you'll just lose that one word. Like, wow, what was that word? I don't know. I do that all the time where it's like a word that I should know on a daily basis. And, well, it's just gone, or just those little things that get you tongue tied or what have you. Even when you're just riffing, those things will happen. we were going to talk about cue cards, and I think that's an interesting thing because that's really good for improv and for things that need timing. Because someone running a prompter for you is doing something similar that a cue card operator are. So if you're not running your own prompter, which a lot of times I'm running my own prompter, filming myself and performing at the same time, but it's most of the stuff's on auto. So like I know the speed of my prompter that I like, which is 3 clicks. Whatever that means. That's the speed that I would
go button 3 times.
I press down 3 times, and that's the right speed for me to read. But I know that I've had other people that they're 2 clicks, and that's just the speed of their voice. Whereas I like 2 clicks is too slow, and I'll run to the end of the page and have to be like, and then be able to keep on going. Versus like, and that's the nice thing about someone running the proper, they can see, they're getting to the end, I can speed it up for a second, right, so they can get with it. But I have a hard time with that uneven speed sometimes too. But it's just people's speed of the way they talk, where you're from usually dictates the speed of your speech. I don't think I speak as fast as people maybe that grew up in Southern California. I definitely have heard voices that are much faster than I am, though I know I speak fast because I've been accused of it, but when I was living in the South. So, and I think that's just what people are used to. I don't think it's like talking about things you shouldn't be ever.
There's like another thing here, right, with the prompter speed, and this is like the skill of running a prompter in the sense, right? Like, so say the prompter is running at a constant speed, and you have text loaded up into it. Well, not every line of text is the same number of syllables, and not every chunk of text in there is equally spaced out vertically. Sometimes there's like an empty line, like where paragraphs break or something, and sometimes a sentence will break and one word will be on a line, and as a result, the prompter can go at a certain speed, but if you're reading at a certain speed, you might fall behind. Maybe you're a skilled enough performer on camera to see that coming and adjust your vocal speed accordingly.
I am not.
I always get to that spot where I'm reading at a good pace, and then there's like a line break, an empty line, and it's like I'm not anticipating that, and I got to wait for the next thing to start and hit the screen again,
Yeah, or even just spacing your breaths. Sometimes if you don't know where the break's going to be, that's hard to deal with. When I worked at the TV station, we had a couple of the shows that didn't have as much budget, so they didn't get to have a camera, or they might not have a camera operator either, but they don't have a prompter operator. So the anchors were actually controlling it themselves. And so they either had a knob that they turned for the speed, which is kind of nice. I would like, that's a little more positive than pressing buttons. You can speed up and slow down, and their hands are underneath the desk. So that's okay. Though not everybody can do that. And then they actually had a foot pedal too that could do the same thing. That was, you push forward to go faster and back to go slower. But the thing that a prompter can't do that cue cards can is skipping a whole section. So they work really good for improv because, you think of like the Tonight Show or, one of these variety shows that, I actually really followed Jimmy Fallon from when he started at the late night and then went into the Tonight Show because I was working for a NBC affiliate at the time, but I was also really interested in how the production was. And you could see that Jimmy was starting to learn how to passively tell next joke. Like he was reading the crowd to go, nope, don't want to do that joke, or that kind of thing. Whereas like, I know Conan actually just will say it. He's like, no, we're not doing that one. They didn't laugh at that, so they use some good ploys to do that, but it allows for that pausing and emphasis in a different way through, handwriting that can actually, we can do bold and italicized and that kind of thing, but sometimes handwriting is really more expressive. Some prompter tricks that I learned at the news that I bring along with me is putting periods before my sentences. So when they're scrolling past, you have a period for every line. So press a period, return, period, return. And so I'll have 5 to 7 periods just so I have some space to like take a deep breath as it's starting to go. And I can choose the words, where they are on the screen to start reading them or what have you, so that it's not like ready to go. That's pretty difficult to deal with. The other thing is sometimes if you have short enough content is actually making your font size small enough so it actually will fit all on the same screen. So you don't have to actually move the words at all. Your eyes will move a little bit more depending on how far away you are from the camera. But I definitely I do that method a lot because I am usually choosing small things to get on camera for. They're either things that are hard to show visually that it's just a whole lot easier to get through the content by being on camera, just saying it to the camera rather than showing, or it's just something that I need as a bridge between two things so I don't have a jump cut or some other kind of connections. But I've done cue cards like in the idea of that, which is a script taped to the bottom of the screen of the lens. This is better on lenses that have a big hood on them or whatever, and so someone can read them or look down to see where they are to know the way they are. But a lot of times you want to shoot them at a different angle because of that, because they're looking down. I had a doctor that he had no intention to ever read the script or read what we wrote for him before we even got there to approve it. So we'd give him something. He'd read it just before we were going to tape him and go, I want to change it to this and this and this. And so then we'd have to turn the script over, write it in Sharpie and then tape it to the screen or to the bottom part of the lens. And that was just how we did it. And he was okay with the way he looked doing it. And he was the client, so that was good enough. But I wasn't okay with it if I could have muscled. But sometimes, when the person that's paying the checks, you just go, okay, that's the way we're doing it. Let's do it. So definitely one of those. It's a difficult thing. Like I said, I have different expectations when I'm a director too. So like I've made some choices when I'm producing myself and things I know about myself. Like I have a weird eye that gets bigger than the other when I'm talking sometimes, or my eyes get big when I'm reading something and I'm trying to be expressive, but instead I'm looking angry or mad. Definitely if you're not somewhat smirking a little bit, you might look a little angry. I know I do. If I'm just thinking, I might look like I'm mad about something, but I'm just brain's just thinking, and my face, doesn't care. So, those are things to be careful of. But, it's really great to have a director in the room. I know you were talking about it in the last time we recorded, is that it's really important to have, if you can, have someone there to identify those things that you weren't aware of while you're speaking. I do that by like going and reviewing my footage, and I don't take down my setup before I've looked through all of my takes to make sure I'm good with them all and all that kind of thing. So I don't have to just go in and do a quick take, which is easier at the stage or at Videomaker, because we don't break down that in fact it's the seat you're sitting at right now, so it's really easy to just go jump in and do a line. I've definitely had times where I said the wrong word, like you see the length of the word, you saw what the letter started with and ended, and your brain just made it another word, and you were not aware of that at all. You just read through it like it was nothing confidently, and it's like that didn't make any sense. So I've had to do some ADR of lines and trying to put them in there, especially even when you're on cameras. It's more difficult than other times, but speed is really where it's at when it comes to that. But there's relying on a director to be like, hey, your hands are weird. You're doing weird things with your eyes. You're in and out of focus because you're rocking because you're nervous or whatever, or you're squinting because you can't see you can't see it. Or I have a mumble that sometimes when I want to get through things fast, I start mumbling the words, and it's good to have someone point that out while you're doing it rather than having to live with it once you've completed shooting.